Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself, George, and today I'm bringing you a very short review on the upcoming Netflix documentary release, Schumacher, of course, based on the Formula One legend with the same surname. That's not his son yet. Maybe one day, who knows? Maybe Mick will get his own documentary. But as I said, we are here to talk about this documentary. It's weird talking about documentaries because I'm not going to sit here and say there are spoilers. This is about his life. So anything that's in the public image, anything you may have heard about, I will be discussing his legacy, his history. I'll be going into that. I'm not going to give you a running of A, B, and see what happens, but I will give my thoughts on some of the decisions made with the documentary making. But before I get into that, I want to go over some of the places where you can find us. If you're new to the channel, if you've never seen what we do, of course, we're a film channel. We are very far into the Bond films, obviously tying into F1 of Aston Martin and things like that. And we've also covered Drive to Survive in the past. It's something we'll continue to do so whilst the show is airing. So if you're into Formula One, we do have the odd thing. We even covered Rush way back. So do follow us. Our details are below also of our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Letterboxd. They're also in the link in the description below. And I want to know your thoughts. Obviously, we're active in the comments. This is pre-recorded. The embargo is coming up tomorrow, so this is being recorded the day before that is up. And I want to hear you guys' thoughts on Michael Schumacher. If you see this documentary, let us know your thoughts. But just Formula One fans, your thoughts on him as a driver, as a racer, obviously everything that's happened in between, or just comment any stuff on the sport. And I'll get back to those. I'll reply to those comments because it's a very interesting topic when we get to talk about sports stuff on this channel. It's not often, and we are seeing definitely a more sport documentaries, I guess you could argue, over the last few months. That being said, it is time to give my thoughts on the film, and it's a very weird one. So I'm going to sort of go into my background with the sport with F1 because I think this review is going to not split into two, but there's two approaches to take. There is the very much like Drive to Survive. There are going to be the people watch this, the Tifosi, the Ferrari fans, the Formula One fans, the Schumacher fans that know everything there is to know about him. And that's a really big thing. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a massive Schumacher fan. I know his whole life. I know the core of it, and I know exactly what we got in this documentary. And there's going to be people that aren't F1 fans that may have joined the sport with Drive to Survive, or the last couple of years they never saw him race, or they're not aware of what he was like, and this is going to be an insight into his life. So whoever is watching, whatever your background, I'm going to try and get to both sides of this because this is what makes documentaries to me harder to do, is those that know the background and those that don't. And different people will have different expectations for a documentary like this at the exact same time. So I think that's very important. Me personally, I'm a massive F1 fan, as a lot of people may know. So it is one of them I've been looking forward to since they've announced. And of course, this documentary was tying in with the 30th anniversary in which Schumacher debuted in the sport. Obviously, it was in Spa in 1991. Obviously, it's coming out September the 15th now, so it was delayed. I do wonder if they originally wanted it out in August, but I can't have any complaints. But the timing of it makes absolute sense, especially with Mick's first year in the sport. It's really interesting hearing him talking about his dad, as obviously we know it's not a subject that's going to get discussed properly in the paddock, and rightfully so. I want to add to that, but kind of my initial thoughts with this is that I thought it was fine. Because I know the core of his story, I know the title wins, the rivalries, the issues, the return to Mercedes, obviously the tragedy of the France and what's happened. I'm very familiar with Schumacher as a subject, with iconic moments of his career. So it was one of those where I'm not going to sit here and say, it's rubbish. It's not at all. I think it is a very solid documentary. If you don't have any thoughts or knowledge on him or the sport, I think this could be a very interesting documentary for your home. But again, if you are a member of the Tifosi, this isn't going to be something where you're finding out new things. And it does primarily begin with 91, the debut at Spa, and then we get a lot of his sort of growing up, his background, and then obviously we get the F1 career and the return. So I can't say that they're trying new things or there's interesting narrative structures. It's a very paint by the numbers documentary, and I don't think that is a bad thing. I think when you look at the core of what this film is doing, the story it's telling, it is telling the story of Michael Schumacher, and a big thing of that, he is a 7-time world champion. He is one of the best of all time. And the one thing I really appreciate with this documentary, and this isn't because I'm a Hamilton fan or, I think Senna did kind of veered this way. It wasn't him saying he's the best ever that's done it, and here is why. And I always get really worried with not just F1 documentaries or sports documentaries when you've got an iconic driver, sportsman, and their sort of documentary saying why they're better than everybody else. This never ventures into that, which I think is really important, because I think F1 more so than other sports, it's almost impossible to compare drivers. You can, and it's possible, and everyone's going to have their opinion, but it's something where, if you make a documentary just to say someone's better than the rest, I think that's a negative for me, and this doesn't do it. Of course, this is going to, he's a 7-time world champion. It'd be absolutely dumb to think that he wasn't good at the sport, but the film doesn't just go on about how he won stuff, which was really exciting for me. I got really worried that we'd reach a point and they're just going to talk about how he won so many world titles because he's the best and he's so quick. And it never veered into it. It told quite a compelling story. And I think where you want to go with this is of course, what is the aim of the documentary is to educate those that aren't familiar with the situation. And it's a really great way to show at the time how he was a young up-and-coming driver. The drivers we had on the grid, of course, we had Prost and Senna, and they discussed things like that. They discussed his breakthrough, how the contract came to be. We've got some incredible archive footage, which is something I really want to talk about. You do expect from a documentary, but this has footage that I've never seen. This is footage that his family have given to the production to use. I believe the Schumacher families had final say on the documentary as well. So don't go into this expecting some gossip or some updates about his sort of personal life at the moment. You're not going to find anything like that. And again, rightfully so with that, because that is down for the family to stay private with. And they reiterate that he has always been a family man. That I think there's a line from his wife where she says that we are, he protected us from the press, and now we're doing the same. And it was really interesting hearing that. And that's kind of going to be one of my other things, actually. I know I've sort of rambled on about my thoughts with it, but if you're coming at this as somebody that doesn't know Formula One, I think you're going to enjoy this. I think it's well made. It's going to tell you the story. It's going to do it in a linear fashion. It's not trying to be too smart with itself. And it doesn't gloss over some of the major incidents that question his legacy. You, of course, get the Damon Hill incident, for those not familiar with that, the Villeneuve stuff, and Spa with David Coulthard. So I'm not going to go into the details of those for those that haven't seen the film or aware of them, but I'm going to say this doesn't gloss over how perfect he was. I will say that there is a bit more time that I think could have been left on some of those other situations. It does move on, but I'd say the core of this documentary, which is what gripped me the most, was actually the gaps between him winning world championships. It really focused on that sort of 90, 95, 96 to 2000 gap. And I think that's really interesting, because I thought, we're just going to get, how great was it between 2000s, 2004? And that was my worry heading into it, that it would focus on such a specific part of a story which everybody knows, and it didn't. And I find that really interesting. As somebody that didn't watch Michael Zero of the sport, I began watching F1 in 07, so he'd just retired at my entry point into it, and he's someone obviously through archive footage, through the F1 app and stuff like that, I've seen a lot of old footage from. So personally, I didn't learn anything new in this documentary. I thought it was interesting what they tried to do, but it's very solid in that sense. You can't go into this documentary expecting something other. And one thing that kind of comes in with that, which I found really interesting, was the people they use in the documentary. You could assume this would be full of drivers, every driver he ever raced against trying to get their way in, but they actually don't. I'm going to read off a couple of names. I believe they're online for people to see, but of course you have his family members, including Mick, who's obviously in the sport now. We have Mika Hakkinen, David Coulthard, Damon Hill, Vettel. There's a really quick moment in there for people. Any Vettel fans, you're not going to get more than a minute with them, I'm sorry, but it was one of those where the people they brought in wasn't just for the sake of it. Everybody had a part of the story to tell about Schumacher's career, of course, his brother, his parents as well. So it's one of those where the people they brought in were right. Ross Brawn and a few of the F1 high-ups, John Todt was there as well. They're very important to bring in. They worked with him at Ferrari, and they're integral members to the F1, not just community, but even working today within the sport. They are high-ups. So the documentaries had the good intentions, and I think when you've been able to bring in the people that are still connected to him in a personal life, it adds a lot more to it. If you didn't have that bank of approval from, how can you have a Schumacher documentary without Ross Brawn or without Jean Todt? And when you get documentaries that go down this path where they've not got the people willing to contribute towards it, I think that's something that can fault a bit. It's not a fault of this, but it does lead to my biggest criticism of the documentary, is that obviously a lot of these people don't speak English, or they can, but they speak in the documentary in their fluent tone, which is fine. These subtitles in this documentary are the biggest problem, because it's fine to watch foreign films. Subtitles come at the bottom. It's what you expect. For some reason with Netflix, they decide to have them at the top of the screen, bottom of the screen, top of the screen again. They'll have them speaking them, and then mid-sentence they will drop down to the bottom of the screen. And it's really not complex to follow, but it's very distracting that you're taking away from what's being said, what you're seeing on screen, because they're having too much fun with moving the placement of the subtitles. I thought that's really distracting, and I think it's not a major problem, but it is, why can't you let someone finish their sentence without us having to switch our eyeline and stuff like this? It's a very distracting problem that I don't watch many Netflix documentaries. I don't know if they do this in other aspects, but that's my biggest concern, which isn't a bad concern, all things considered. It's a technical fault on the other end. It's not the quality of the documentary that's a problem, but I also can't imagine that being a problem for people watching this. That, yes, it's going to make you look around a few times, you're going to get pissed off, but it's not ruining the essence of the documentary. So I did want to flag that because I found that to be very important. And aside from that, I don't have many other complaints with it, in truth. As I said, it's a solid paint by the numbers documentary. It's not going to sit there. I don't think it's as good as the Senna documentary right away. And it is one of those where obviously the situation behind it, I think a lot of people are going to head into this with intrigue, with expectation of potentially seeing him or something about him, and you're not going to get that. So please don't go into this expecting it to be like a news article. You're not getting that. But aside from that, I do recommend it. If you're into F1, this is one to watch. If you're wanting to learn more about Schumacher himself, this is also one to watch. So do check this out when it is released next Wednesday, the 15th. I did enjoy myself watching it. It was really good fun to reminisce about the past. And I'll really quickly say one other problem I do have actually is the coverage of the death of Ayrton Senna. I think they did it quite distastefully. But I'll probably put that on social media next week when other people have had a chance to watch it. But that being said, as I mentioned, I want to know your thoughts on this. I want to know your thoughts on Michael Schumacher, him as a driver, his legacy in the sport. Is he the best of all time? Is he not? Comment below. Let us know all of that. I will reply to those messages, and do hit that subscribe. And as I said, there could be some more F1 stuff coming in the future, which would be lovely to get some more opinions on for. So do stick with us. And if you're not just into F1, if you do like normal films as well, of course, we've got our James Bond retrospective. So coming next Tuesday, the 14th of September, we have Quantum of Solace. That's going to be on the channel. That's going to be a fun one. We've also got a couple of other new releases, such as everybody's talking about Jamie. We're going to have the Green Knight at some point towards the end of the month. And of course, as I said, James Bond as well. So it's going to be a busy month. And maybe that's the Martin. There'll be other mentions of F1 in the new film. Who knows? It's something I'll probably be looking into, the that racing green color. But that being said, I want to thank everybody for watching today. It's been a very interesting thing talking documentaries. They're very hard things to review. They're not easy to review. And if you don't know anything about Schumacher, I hope I haven't spoiled too much. But thank you all for watching, and be sure to join us on the next one.